Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Monday night panel. This is instead of the on the sofa, but we will be talking about the Wimbledon game at the weekend. We've got a couple of our long distance supporters on the panel tonight, so we can have a chat with them about their travels to away games and home games as well. So let's bring Vic on first. Good evening.
A very good evening to you, Chris. How are we this evening? We okay?
I'm very well, thank you. Very, very well.
Jolly good.
And I think we need to talk about badges as well tonight, don't we?
We certainly do. We've had a second batch of badges delivered, and Chris, they'll be going on the OSC website very shortly. These are the Derby Rimmer badges, which have proved very popular, aren't they?
They have been very, and I would have one to show you, but I've just actually put it in an envelope to send to Stephen Darby. So, so I can't show you one. But if anybody hasn't seen them, they are very, very nice. It's of the purple shirt that we had with the Derby Rimmer on it. And it's actually got Stephen's signature on it as well. So they're very nice. So they will be on the website, as Vic said, very shortly for you to buy.
And we'll have plenty available in the Legends Lounge before the game on Saturday, of course.
Yes,
as well.
Yes, they will be. Yeah. They will be. So you got SAS news?
Yeah, SAS travel. If you're wanting to go to Tranmere on the 22nd, yes, the Saturday before
23rd.
Christmas. 23rd, sorry. Yeah, the Saturday before Christmas. What month is this?
Oh, God, the 22nd.
The 23rd of 22nd is the Junior Reds party. Yeah, absolutely right. The 23rd is the Saturday before Christmas. Tranmere Rovers away. If you want to go on SAS travel, the last few spaces for that are available tomorrow night on the phone from 7 o'clock. So if you want to go to Tranmere on SAS travel, 7 o'clock tomorrow night, phone bookings only, thank you. And you can get a space on SAS travel. Plenty of spaces available at the match, I assume, because it's a big away end, isn't it? So
yes,
there you go.
Yeah. Okay, and also on Saturday, we will be giving out our Santa hats again. This year, we've gone into partnership with the Trust, and we've ordered some hats, Santa hats. So if your children would like them, please come and see. There'll be plenty of volunteers around the stadium with a bag of Santa hats to give away.
Can I just bring some memories back? Because today is the anniversary of a very special game. December the 11th, 1979. Swindon Town 4, Arsenal 3, League Cup quarter-final replay at the County Ground. Steve Walford own goal, Alan Mays, John Hollins own goal, Andy Rowland, Leon Brady, the magical Leon Brady, with 2 goals for Arsenal, and Brian Talbot. Andy Rowland's winner coming in the 116th minute, and what a wonderful moment that was. So this day, 1979, Swindon Town 4, Arsenal 3. How does that sound?
That was one of my first big games. It was a bit of an eye-opener, that, when I'd
wonderful game.
2-3 years then. So yes.
Okay,
so let's bring our guests on. Good evening, Rob.
Evening.
Evening.
Good evening, Craig, and good evening, Declan.
Good evening.
Okay, any questions, please leave them in the comments. We'll get through as many as we can. And we are expecting one other person. So when Andy does come up, I'll pop him on as well. Okay, speak to you later.
Okay, Chris, thanks very much indeed. Welcome, gentlemen all. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Rob, thank you very much. Craig, thank you very much. And Declan, thank you very much. We'll get into the Wimbledon game in a minute. And boy, will we get into the Wimbledon game. But I just wanted to get the experiences of our long-distance travellers. Now, Craig, I mean, I don't know. Do you ever doubt your sanity? Possibly Saturday was one of those days. Tell us about your 48-hour journey to watch Swindon Town lose at Wimbledon.
Hello, Vic, and thanks for inviting me on. It wasn't quite 48 hours, but it felt longer. I left my house in Kirkintilloch, which is halfway between Glasgow and Stirling, at about 9 p.m. on Friday night. Went past a house which had some Christmas lights, which looked to me like they spelled out ST, and I thought that's a good sign. Of course, we now know with the benefit of hindsight that was a bad sign. Got the bus into the centre of Glasgow, had about an hour to spare before my coach to Victoria, so I had a wee dram of whiskey, as is the Glasgow custom. Got on the coach at 10:45. arrived at Victoria at 7:15. Had a long breakfast with my son. It was nice to see him. I've not seen him for a bit. We exchanged birthday presents, which was nice. Both Swindon Town related, of course. And then to the match via the Antelope pub in Tooting, and I met some of the London Reds, which was a lovely experience. It was great, you know. In fact, it was a great away day, actually, apart from the football. I mean, the football was shocking, but it was a lovely day out. So a long journey, then to another pub in Putney, and then I got the coach back from Victoria at 10:30, got back to Glasgow at 7:15, got the bus back to Kirkintilloch at 8:30, and woke my wife up when I got into bed at 8:45 on Sunday morning. So a long one, but yeah, I mentioned to the coach driver on the way back where I'd been and what I'd been doing, and yeah, he thought I should have been sectioned, but there you go. But it's what you do, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's nice to be invited on here to talk about being a long distance supporter, but you know, you don't do it for kudos. You do it because of, you know, the place it holds in your identity, the connection to place and the community. I mean, like, you know, if we wanted to go and see a team that won every week, we'd be supporting Man City or, you know, Liverpool or Arsenal or somebody, wouldn't we? And it's what you do. So I just happen to live a long way away from my hometown, unfortunately, but that's what it is.
Yeah,
but yeah, long
trip. When you told the bus driver where you've been and what you've done, did he threaten to put you off the bus? I mean, that seemed to me.
Well, he actually said, "Oh, I've got a mate of mine who I won't do the accent because I'll get drummed out of Scotland." But he said he had a mate who lived in Swindon who goes up to Glasgow every week to support Celtic. So I mean, it's kind of, you know, there's nothing unusual about it really, but it's just yeah, it's a bit grim at times. But it was a long old day Saturday. It was nice to get home into my own bed.
Yeah, sure. Right, Declan, your story is, well, I was going to say, normally you fly in the morning and then you fly home in the evening and from Dublin, but wasn't quite the case this time, was it? You had a luxury weekend in South London.
Yes, indeed, Vic. Thanks very much indeed for the invite back on again. Listen, I love London. My other half loves London as well, and I have a particular affiliation for the Wimbledon story, to be honest with you, from the time they went back to Plough Lane. I've been there a couple of times for games in the past. So when the fixture list came out earlier in the year, I looked at it, I said, a pre-Christmas trip to London, how do you fancy that? So she said yes, and we went to the game. We flew out on Friday, stayed in London Friday night, took her to Wimbledon Tennis Centre on Saturday, which she enjoyed, and I did as well because I'm a fan of the tennis. And then we went around to Plough Lane, and all was good until about 3:minutes, as the previous speaker said there on Saturday afternoon. So yeah, it was a long walk back to Wimbledon on Saturday evening, but we had a pleasant evening and came home yesterday. So but look, it's all about the love of Swindon Town. You some of you guys do it every week, and I would take my hat off to you for going to Hartlepool and places like that over the years. It's tremendous commitments, and what I do is it's rare enough really for away games, but it's just a pity it wasn't a better result and performance on Saturday.
Did you think you possibly could have stayed at the tennis centre during the afternoon? Would that have been a better afternoon?
Yeah. The statues there were probably more interesting than what we had on the pitch, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's a funny story actually. Coming through the airport on Friday morning, through security, the guys told him where I was going, and he said, "You're about 6 months too late for that, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." I felt like that on Saturday evening at 5 o'clock, I can tell you. But there you go.
Absolutely. Well, Tony says, "Evening, Craig. See you on Saturday." So Tony Goff, of course, is always at the county ground. And hello to Ian. What a memory, that the Arsenal game. I remember that night very well. Well, we all do. An incredible night. Rob, your journey was slightly shorter, I think it's fair to say, but it felt longer somehow.
That's a good way to sum it up, I think. But yeah, it was a crazy, crazy day, wasn't it? Because of everything that went on the pitch. Off the pitch, as these two guys have already suggested, it was quite a nice trip, wasn't it? But in terms of being on the pitch, heaven forbid what started and what finished. It was a day to forget, is probably putting it extremely mildly. I don't think we've been out-battled, out-bullied, outplayed quite as badly as that for many a long time. We've seen some poor performances over the course of these last few months. We know this last month has been we've had a slight improvement, but we were coming off quite a low base, weren't we, to start with, and that took us straight back to square one again, because some of the defending that we saw on Saturday albeit we know that first goal should have been disallowed with 2 players down with a head injury inside the 6-yard box. Things may have been different had that not been given, and had Kemp not hit the post, had Jake Young taken that chance at the end of the first half. But you cannot capitulate like Swindon capitulated in that second period. That was embarrassing to watch, and it was a very, very sad journey back. Thankfully, ours was a bit shorter than both Declan and Craig's, but it never felt like it, I have to say.
No, it was a long old day, really. And I think, sadly, there was a lot of problems on the motorway near Swindon as well, which added to it. But I think there were problems which we, those sort of problems, well, you have to accept because people have had a worse day than you have, I think it's
Absolutely.
fair to say. Hello, Lena. Sat next to a chap that had spent £108 on rail tickets in North Yorkshire. He left before the end, shaking his head. Goodness me. Andy said, I stayed to the end to avoid the rush. I mean, I think, was it after the 3rd goal or the 4th goal when there was a mass departure? I can't remember.
Third
which
one, but then everyone else that was left went after the 4th. So.
Yeah.
Lads,
so there we are.
Were we lucky to survive a penalty shout in the first half as well against us?
Possibly. I wasn't sold on it, I have to say, Declan. But then I had my Swindon coloured specs on, so that's not normally that's always the case in that situation.
And don't forget they hit the post as well, as much as we did, of course, in the second half. So,
and of course, we didn't pass to any of our players in the first half an hour, which also didn't help.
No, it was a shambles.
I can't remember 30 minutes where we've never got out of our half before now, because that's what it felt like. It was constant bombardment. Even though they didn't have shed loads of chances, it was just a constant siege on our goal. We just could not play out.
I note that 5 Wimbledon players are in the League 2 Team of the Week this week. I mean, were they that good, or were we that bad, Craig? How would you sum it up? I mean, because 5 players in a Team of the Week, that's an extraordinary amount, isn't it?
Swindon Town were shocking. I mean, we that's the worst performance of the season. They're conceding those goals at Wrexham away, those 3 late goals at Accrington. There's a kind of feeling of inevitability, and you can feel your blood draining away, can't you, when we kind of capitulate like that? But we just never got going on Saturday. I mean, it was just so good luck to those 5 Wimbledon players. I mean, well done, but you can only play who's in front of you, can't you? But I think we were very, very poor, and I don't know whether those extra days off, backfired. There's the elephant in the room. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we're not party to on this call. That whether that played into it, but they, for whatever reason, they just didn't show up. It was, and this always happens when there's a sellout, isn't it? Every time we take a big away support, we it used to be when we played live on telly, we play badly, but yeah, it was just. Disappointing is not really the word. It was just a sad inevitability to the whole thing, and it just I get why people will be shaking their heads and leaving early, but I thought I'll stay to the end to see what happens. You never know, But
well, you've been on a bus for 3 days. You ought to stay to the end, really.
I've got to get my money's right, haven't we?
Well, quite absolutely. I mean, Declan, the point is the pancake was as proverbially flat as it possibly could be on Saturday. That's how it felt, didn't it? It just felt. There wasn't any zest in the team. There wasn't any go in the team. And it's not as if they'd played 3 games in a week, was it? They'd had a long rest.
Yeah. I thought when we knew that we were going to have the break that it might benefit us, in terms of getting more training done, getting a couple of players back from injury or whatever as well. Although I think our recent run was 2 wins and a draw in the last 3 games. It wasn't as if they were emphatic or anything like that. Obviously, as Accrington had showed the previous week, conceding a crazy 3 goals in 10 minutes of injury time. I think you got to give Wimbledon credit for the way that they've been going about their business over the last few weeks. In fairness to them, 6 wins out of 6. Their boss has them got playing really, really well, really united on and off the pitch. They're a really good example of what we should be, Vic. But unfortunately, at the moment, we're not for some reason. So 5 players in the team of the week. I'm not overly surprised at that. I watched their cup game on Monday. I know it was a non-league team that were playing, but the sense of occasion, the sense of belief in the players, the positivity in the players shone through from the first minute to the last. And unfortunately, from our perspective, they carried that into Saturday's game as well. It was a great opportunity for us to kick on, and unfortunately, we just didn't take it.
Yeah, let's have a look at the top of the table. Stockport County running away with it at the minute. 21 games played, 43 points. Then come Wrexham, 37 from 20. Barrow, of course, we play them on Saturday, 37 from 20. That's the top three. Mansfield 4, 36 from 19. Crewe Alexandra, 36 from 20. Notts County, 36 from 21. Then Wimbledon in the fourth playoff place, 31 points from 20 games. We're in ninth, 30 points from 21 games. Now, there are two things to look at here. 1 point outside the playoffs. But, Rob, that mythical game in hand has now long since disappeared. And the one thing that worries me is the goal difference has gone down to +3, which was quite large at one stage. And I note that the manager said that we're conceding too many goals. Well, yeah, I mean, that's not difficult to see.
Right.
Is it?
You can't argue with his logic. He's right.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of balance on that last point, by the way, there were 5 games called off in League Two on Saturday. So the chances of getting 5 players in a team when you've played well is reasonably well.
Yeah, fair play. Yeah, fair point. Yeah.
But when you think back to where we were after 90 minutes at Accrington, we were 7 goals better off when you think about the goal difference stats. And let's be quite honest, if that game at Accrington had carried on for 5 more minutes, we'd be 3 points worse off now as well, because we'd have lost that one too.
Yeah.
So it's very, very difficult, isn't it, at the moment? Because you look at that squad, it's depleted on numbers. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to work that out. We all know that we've got injuries. We all know the squad wasn't big enough at the start of the season. We all know there's many other factors to put together when you're talking about trying to create a team that are going to push towards the top of the table. You need that togetherness. You need that spirit. All of that seems to have been drummed out of everybody just at the moment. It's not just on the pitch, it's off the pitch. It's everything else that's going on in terms of the fan base as well. Nobody seems to be pulling in the same direction. And if you want success, and you pinpointed Stockport earlier on, they've come out of non-league. They've had everything going their way in the course of the last few years. Fans have been united. Their attendance is through the roof compared to what they were when they went out of the league. They're increasing tenfold pretty much on where they were towards the back end of their stay in the EFL before. And that's your blueprint. That's how you get yourself moving forward back up the table again. And we seem to flip-flap between these absolutely superb moments where we're basically the best team in the world to being the worst team in the world, and everybody who's associated with the club needs to depart immediately. I've never known a period in our history where people have been so up for 5 minutes and so down for what feels like the rest of the day. It's a very, very strange scenario, and I don't know how you bring that back in line. If I had those magical answers, then I'd be sharing them with the club, I can tell you.
Yeah. Well, sharing with us. Sorry, Declan, off you go.
So I think we have had a horrific run of games as well, to be fair, playing most of the top teams. Having said that, if you're serious about the business of getting out of this goddamn awful league, you've got to get results against teams like that. More positive results than we've got in some cases. And I know we got a last-minute winner against Mansfield, which again masked a lot of the difficulties and a lot of the problems that we have. But as I said earlier, you've got to go to a place like Wimbledon on Saturday, be more organised, be more committed, everything you expect your team to be when you pay your 20 quid, 25 quid, whatever it is, on the gate to go in. We didn't get that on Saturday. And we've got transfer window coming up, which I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit later on. But if you're a player looking at the Swindon situation at the moment, thinking about a move, you ask yourself, do you want to be in that environment at the moment as well?
Well, it's a very good question. And everybody expects Swindon to make lots of signings, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But if you are a player looking to go to League Two and a decent team in League Two, at the minute, Swindon are in 9th place and outside the playoffs. So that's the situation. Craig, I've got a question here for you. I'll just comment from Mark first. Hi, Mark. What is going on with this team and our football club? When we're bad, we're seriously shocking. Just make me question what goes on the training ground, bearing in mind we had 2 weeks to prepare. Thank you very much for that, Mark. Lee, hello, Lee. Right, here's your question, Craig. Was it worse than Aldershot? I'm not sure anything's worse than what Aldershot.
Aldershot's an interesting one because I travelled down to Swindon from Kirky. We call Kirkintilloch Kirky. travelled down to that game, and I made the call to stay with my dying father-in-law. He died about a week later. We listened to that on the radio, and in one of Dennis Duncan's final sentient moments, he had a kind of moment of lucidity and went, 7. And at that point, I'd like to say that he threw his scarf across the room. He didn't quite do that, but so I listened to the radio commentary of the Aldershot game with my dying father-in-law, which is a special moment and a touching moment. It's not a game I'll ever forget, but I mean, it sounded atrocious. And speaking to friends I know, apparently the County Grand Hotel had their best day of the season. It was chocker in there by about 3:30. And with people leaving early, so you don't leave early unless it's shocking. So Lee, I wasn't at Aldershot, but I mean, we got 4 goals against Aldershot. You know, after the Lord Mayor's show, we had 1 shot on target on Saturday. So I don't know, but that's the worst. I've seen 13 games this season. That was the worst I've seen on Saturday.
Well, we wish you and your family well, Craig, obviously, bearing in mind your sad loss recently. So we wish you well. Let's have a look. Gosh, more comments coming in, and lots of them. This is from Andy. If they can't play after they had 10 days off, they don't deserve to be in the team. Right, here's a good one from Kevin. There's always good ones from Kevin, let's be honest. Good to see Mr. Flynn giving players a rollicking from pitch side. Now, we'll get Declan's view on this in a minute because he was quite close to this. Rob, what's your view?
Well, I think there seems to be a little change in the way that people expect managers to behave these days, don't they? I mean, if you go back 20, 30 years ago and the good old Alex Ferguson hairdryer treatment and everything else that went alongside it, there wasn't much of a concern for player welfare, was there? It was very much a case of we'll say what we want as managers and we'll get away with whatever it is that we say. Makes no difference. The world's a slightly different place now, and you can't necessarily get away, or certainly somebody's going to film it, whatever it might be. If you decide to step into that lion's den, so to speak, where you're going to put your head above the parapet and you're going to say something that people are going to identify with and they're going to then share on social media, you've got to be prepared for the backlash that might come with it. And as a fan looking at the situation, if I'd have been in Michael Flynn's situation, I'm sure I would want to shout something to most of those players because they weren't doing what I'm sure they've been practicing on that training pitch over those 10 days, as we've been talking about. But there are ways and means. And if he feels that's the way he's going to get the right reaction from his players, then I guess that's something that's in his armoury to do. Do we actually feel he got that reaction and a positive one from his players? I think the result tells you the answer to that, doesn't it? So maybe screaming and shouting and bawling and whatever else you want to do with it is not the way forward anymore. But then again, is that just simply a state that players are now looked at in a slightly different way to what they used to be?
Craig, what's your view on it?
It all felt very League Two to me. I mean, it's the fact that it was filmed. You don't normally see that. You know, you think about that famous one with what's his name, Parkinson at Bradford, and Jimmy Bullard kind of, taking the mick, doing the telling off. You rarely see that kind of rollicking pitch side. Yeah, I mean, he's the manager. He makes the decisions, but it was unusual to see that in your face like that. But I don't know. It did get the reaction, did it? And I think that if you're prepared to take a chance and nurture and develop 18, 19-year-old players, I think you've got a duty of care to them. And I think that, I think when I did my coaching badges to coach under 12s and under 16s, you're told not to treat kids like that. So I wasn't sure that was the right way to go about it. That's my feeling.
Right. I think you mean Phil Brown, wasn't it? Was it Phil Brown?
Phil Brown,
yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Our previous much vaunted manager. Yes. Declan, now you were a few rows back from behind the dugouts, wasn't it? What happened as far as you were concerned?
First of all, to say about Michael, he's a vastly experienced football manager, as we know. He was clearly frustrated with the start that his team had made to the game on Saturday. There was a break, if you remember, in the play. The players were called over to the touchline. He got quite verbal with one or two of them. I agree with the chap there that, football has moved on over the years, and the Brian Clough approach or the Roy Keane approach doesn't necessarily work anymore. He was right, obviously, I think, to have a go at the players, no question about that. What I would question was the manner of it, particularly to the younger players, in front of 8,000 plus people in the stadium. The lad turned around, went back into his position, was shaking his head, and a few minutes later then was taken off for Charlie Austin. So I think there's a way and a time to do these things. The dressing room is ultimately the place to do it. But, obviously Michael had lost patience at that particular stage with it. And I think he probably, when he looks back at it and reflects on it now, thinks he might have handled it perhaps in a slightly better way. But his frustration just I think, overtook him at the time.
Okay. Hello, Martin. 57 goals conceded in 26 games in all competitions. Tony says, well said, Rob. I think it's one of your previous comments, Rob. I can't remember which one it was, but well said. Anyway, well done.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Hi, Sean. We have needed at least one decent centre-half all season long, which probably won't be addressed in January. We'll get to this in a little while, Alan. What's the panel's views following the CEO comments on the season ticket holders getting 9 games free? We will get to that before the end of the stream, so don't worry. Kerry says, hi, Kerry. Maybe it's time for Ward to be given a go. At least he's 6 foot. Most are just too short to win anything in the air. And after sitting right behind the goal on Saturday, Mahoney got out jumped a lot too. We should say Murphy Mahoney's, well, Martin says in his defence, Mahoney has saved us from shipping further goals, and he's made some great saves along the way this season. Stockport County must have the most competitive, to use a word, budget in the league. Saturday was awful, says Mark Jeffries. When Kemp goes back and Young going to be in trouble if Clem doesn't get at least 5 to 6 players in. I know what the answer would be with Clem. I mean, goodness me, Rob. The Kemp Young thing, when we were talking about this back in August, that, of course, seemed a long, long time ago. But here we are, 3 weeks away from January? And I would say, as sure as eggs is eggs is eggs, they're going back, aren't they? So what do we do?
Well, I'm sure we said back in August, September time, let's enjoy the ride. Because at that point in time, it was fabulous, wasn't it? I mean, there's no two ways around it. If Jake Young and Dan Kemp had done nothing in these first 4 months and we'd be keeping them, we wouldn't be in top half of the table, would we? Let's be quite frank, because it's been their goals and their assists that have propelled us to where we've been during the course of this.
Well, Young with 16 goals and 4 assists, Kemp with 10 goals and 8 assists. He's second in the league with assists. So that shows you.
You can't bemoan the fact that both of those signings were superb signings. There's absolutely no doubt at all about that. So you have to compliment the setup to be able to, and Mike Flynn's judgment on those players to bring them in the first place. Because I didn't see lots of comments about Jake Young being a free scoring centre forward when he joined us, I have to say. So you've got to turn around and say that the way the brand of football that we've played has suited those two players absolutely down to the ground, and they've excelled. Now, that's the danger of loan players, isn't it? That's always the danger of loan players. You put them in the shop window as a selling club, effectively, by turning around and saying somebody else can have them. If they succeed, excellent, we'll bring them back. They'll play in our team. Who knows whether they'll have the same level of success or not, but at least you know you'll be bringing back 2 very confident players. Alternatively, you might see the pound signs and cash in. There's 2 options for those selling clubs, but the third option is the one that we want them to follow, and that is just be sensible, leave them here, we'll keep them here, and we'll just keep making them better for you. The Kemp situation is very different to the Young situation, I think. Jake Young, years on his contract at Bradford, they can afford him to go back. They're probably getting bids, I'd imagine, from teams much higher the league than we are. They can rest on their laurels a little bit and just decide, have a look and keep him there for 2 or 3 weeks, see if he fits in. If he doesn't, there'll be alternatives for him to go to, I'm sure. Dan Kemp, they've got Jack Payne at Milton Keynes. Whether Milton Keynes will see us as a rival for promotion this year, I'm not so sure. Is it in their interest to keep Dan Kemp there with 6 months of his contract left? Will somebody else come in with a bid for him? There's lots more ifs and buts, I think, for Dan Kemp. But work on the assumption that both of them have to go back. There's a massive gaping hole in our attack. There's a massive gaping hole in our midfield. And there's a huge, great big chasm in the centre of our defence. Forget the players on both sides of the pitch, because they're not exactly excelling either. You could, the 5 or 6 that were mentioned earlier on, you might be looking 7, 8, 9, 10 at this stage in this transfer window. There is so many gaps in that squad. It's paper thin. And the good old return to the conversation of pre-season, where's our big centre half that's going to win all the headers in this division, still isn't here. So the one thing that worries me more than anything else, and forget the merits, the demerits of the people in charge, we need those players in on the 2nd of January if we're going to be remotely competitive for the rest of the season.
We don't need the last minute in January again, like we normally do.
January, it needs to be the 2nd of January. So we need to have been identifying the players we want now, and we need to move on them straight away as soon as the window opens. And that's the fear for me.
And you would hope that they are talking. I mean, it was said last week by Anthony Hall that they would have discussions once Clem came over in December. Well, I can't believe they're not having discussions now. They surely must have been. And I would be baffled if they didn't, quite frankly. Hi, Rob. I fear for the second half of the season, especially after the inevitable recalls. There was a lack of playing staff investment at the start of the season. Why should we believe they'll be there in January? Because that's the point, isn't it, Craig? We've got a history, really, of signing people on, right up and on deadline in January. I mean, you don't want that. As Rob said, you want them in at the beginning of January ready to go, don't you?
I mean, again, it's this kind of predictable pattern. We've seen it in previous seasons, haven't we? With signing players late, really worrying, particularly the goalkeeper position, worrying reliance upon loan players. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we're told we were going to have a competitive budget. I've got to be with all due respect, it doesn't feel like that anymore. It doesn't feel that we've got the competitive budget that we were promised. I think, in terms of Kemp and Young, I mean, I think, as Rob said, I think we enjoyed the ride. I mean, if Ricky Aguiar was knocking in, if he'd knocked in 30 for Worthing, we'd want him back. And I think that's the nature of things, isn't it? But can I just go off piste a bit, Rob, to Vic, if I may. There was a point that Rob made about 10 minutes ago about Stockport coming back from non-league as a much stronger team. Now, my fear, I think the lasting legacy of Kemp and Young will be that they'll keep us in this division. I think we've amassed about enough points to stay up. But I just think that in the medium term, perhaps that we may have to consider that that one outcome might be that we do get relegated 2 years' time, 3 years' time, whenever. If we're not going to go out this division out the top door, we go out the bottom door. But you look at all the teams that are doing well, that they've come back stronger. They've reorganised. Chesterfield are going through that division well. Stockport have come back. Wrexham have come back, but it's a different story there. In the past, Lincoln, Exeter. We're not immune. I mean, no one's too good to go down. And I kind of think that, of course, that would be a disaster. We're all dreading that, but we might come back stronger. That's a separate discussion for another day. But that's something that I've been increasingly thinking about in the long, dark journeys home. But there you go.
Well, you have a lot of time to think about these things, don't you? And actually, it's been discussed on the bus on more than one occasion, I think. Has it not?
Right, Kirkintilloch to Yeovil is an awful long way.
Yes. Or even Truro City. Sorry,
Just a couple of points there. Dropping out of the Football League would be an absolute disaster. We all know that. And it is possible to happen. It's very, very difficult to get back out of it. Very, very difficult to get back out of it. No guarantee that we would get back into it as easily as some people think that we would. But we don't want to think about that possibility for a long time yet. 3 years ago, we had a young Irishman called Owen Doyle on loan from Bradford. He went back to Bradford.
Yeah.
And if Lee Power only did one thing in his time in charge at Swindon Town, it was to bring him back till the end of that season. I know the results that we got at the end of that season. Young will go back. I don't think we're going to get him back. I think the Eagles are ready to swoop from other clubs for him. I've no doubt about that. I think we've got a better chance of getting Kemp back, to be honest with you. But the contingency plan has to be there. Michael Flynn has to know what the contingency plan is. He has to know what the budget is. And for the fans to be told that it'll be, when Clem comes over in late December, all this will be decided. It doesn't work that way in football. The agents are circling around clubs at the moment. We know they are. They're offering players to clubs. Players are talking to their agents, trying to negotiate moves here, there, and everywhere. But it just seems to me as if we're standing still waiting for something to happen in a month's time. And that bus will be well past us by then, and we'll be exactly in the same position again. That's the most frustrating thing, I think, about it from a fan's point of view.
Yeah, it needs a clear statement straight away, doesn't it? At the beginning of January. That's what it needs. It's something clear and to happen. I think it'll be the 2nd. It won't be the 1st of January, will it? It's no, because Football League won't be open, although bizarrely there'll be games on the 1st of January. But anyway, Peter says, pure speculation, but are some more players than the loanees on the way? But are some more players than the loanees on the way wrecking morale? I'm not quite sure what that means, but thank you, Peter, for that. Derek, hi, Derek. All supporters go to games expecting their club to play well and wanting to win games. Ours are no different, but no club has a divine right to win games, and that includes us. We have to earn the right, but the vitriol of so many will not help us achieve that. That wasn't motivation, it was bullying, says Darren. And Adrian says, why take the defender off? Yeah, I thought Flynn showed a lack of professionalism with that, especially in front of 8,000 people, says Andy. Does that mean that the players don't want to play for Flynn, says Kevin? Dad says, felt like Sunday League to me, playing for the Moonies, and Sid the Kid giving us right rollicking. Yeah, we've all had that in Sunday League, believe me. Yes, so let's have a look at the fixtures on Saturday. Stockport home to Sutton, Wrexham at home to Colchester, Crawley at home to Mansfield, Crewe at home to Accrington, Harrogate, Notts County, Salford, AFC Wimbledon. Those are the top clubs. And, of course, Swindon at home to 3rd place Barrow. Now, the point is, Rob, you look at Barrow and you think, well, normally at this time of the year, we're going to Barrow. You know, it's that simple, really. And had we gone there last Saturday, it would have been off, which would have been a frustrating journey, to say the least. They're not going to be easy, are they?
No, not in one shape or form. They are big, they are physical, play a bit of football, but they make things awfully difficult for their opposition. They have found a way. Another of these clubs that you look at on paper and you think, surely they might find their way back into non-league by the end of the season. But they have a way of playing. They have a spirit amongst their players. And they don't play football that you would look at and say, is out of place in this division. It's the sort of football that you expect to be successful, and there is a blueprint at this level. And I know we play a completely different style to most, but you just look at the teams who've been successful over the last few years. Strap in centre halves, really competitive, combative midfield players. Yes, some of them have got a little bit more quality about them than others, but they've all got this genuine trait about them. They're very difficult to play against. They're horrible, awkward teams that you don't enjoy. Just look at Stevenage and my immortal friend, Steve Evans, who you know I love dearly. But he will put a side out that will be the ugliest, horriblest, miserablest side that you could ever wish to want to play against. And he will bark orders at that team all day long. He will moan all day long at the referee and the 4th official. Poor old 4th officials who have to suffer Steve Evans. God bless them. But it's successful. There's a blueprint, and as much as I hate it because I don't like that bloke one little bit, if you can put those skills together into a league setup, and you can get the players that play it, Barrow is an exact identity of it. That is exactly the type of football that you will see on Saturday. And if you don't, interesting. Like I say, if you don't get in front against those sort of teams, they become really horrible, miserable games to watch.
I was interesting on Saturday, wasn't it, when Wimbledon had 6 players warming up, when I think it's only 3 that they should have.
Yeah.
But they were all huge, weren't they?
Yeah.
They're all massive. And you thought, Josh Davison amongst them, who I think kind of enjoyed the stick he was getting somehow. But, they're all big and muscular and, you just think they're going to... And actually, if you're talking about a League Two team, that was Wimbledon on Saturday, wasn't it? They were combative in midfield. They had players with skill. They were big at the back. That is a League Two team if you think about it, isn't it?
It is, and it's the blueprint that gets success at this level. It may not be the greatest thing to watch, but it's the way that you'll see most teams set up. Some will be better than others. Those that can't cope with the physicality usually end up drifted into mid-table or lower table. They're not. You have to be an exceptional footballing side to be able to take on all of those physical sides. And we're not at the exceptional football stage level. We're very, very good at times during games, but we've got a massively soft underbelly that just gets tickled far too often.
Yeah. Hi, Daniel. Sorry, Declan. Yeah, I was just going to read these comments. I'll be with you in a second. Daniel says, I'm not saying shouting at players should be the norm, but giving players a mouthful when they aren't tracking back is fine by me. That being said, at what point do we question whether the manager is actually getting the best out of these players? Paul says, in Wellens' first season, he lost the plot with players saying they just weren't good enough. Very similar vibes for me now. Squad is so small, lacks various qualities that are sorely needed: height, physicality, experience. And Stephen Jones says Pep Guardiola seems to have the same fiery approach as Flynn. They won on Saturday, quite a rarity. Anyway, Declan, you were going to say, what were you going to say?
I was going to say I felt sorry for Kemp on Saturday, the abuse he was getting from the Wimbledon fans for obvious reasons, as well. But, look, I mean, back in August and September, the sun was shining. It was champagne football. Everyone was buzzing, and now here we are coming up to Christmas, and there's a sense of depression about it. You just get the feeling if you can get one, maybe two results together again, it might just take off coming into the January window, and then see ultimately what happens. Or am I the eternal optimist?
Craig, are you the eternal optimist, or are you, like many Swindon fans, kind of realistic?
It depends. it depends how bad we are. I mean, I think generally I'm quite a positive person, but they certainly do test you, don't they? But I was just thinking, Rob, there's something that you said before about Barrow being the archetype for how to do it, but they're also the archetype of a really, really unfashionable, out on a limb, geographically, culturally, all sorts of ways, politically, a very different place to Swindon. They've got a small population, a very small catchment, a large catchment area, but not many people live there. Lots of sheep and submarines, but not many folk. Not many sponsorship opportunities. Not a huge, kind of not many kind of corporate opportunities. A much smaller playing budget, one would imagine, as a result. Much smaller attendances. Yet they've made it work. I think that's an interesting point, isn't it? Just in terms of that kind of corporate side. Because the population of Barrow is a very small town in a very small, it's a very sparsely populated part of the country. You'd kind of question why you would sponsor, anything there. Would you get, much in return compared to Swindon when even I think even our bootlaces are sponsored. I mean, that's great. We're getting the revenue streams in, but there is the question again, isn't there, of where that money's going and why we're not seeing the instant returns that one might have hoped, shall we say.
It's interesting what you said about Barrow, because if you remember one sunny May day a few months ago when the Stratton Bank was full and we played Barrow at the end of the season and qualified for the playoffs, a fine day. I don't think it'll be the same on Saturday somehow. I was just going to read out an email actually on the subject of the accounts if I can find it. So bear with me for a second. I have my emails in front of me at some point. I can never find the darn things when I want to. That's any trouble.
While you're thinking about that, Vic,
yeah, go on then.
That Barrow point again. Just remember what we've just said about physicality, experience, and whatnot. What happened about 10 minutes from the end of that game when we were winning 1-0? Free kick, 6'5" centre half came up from the back, headed into the top corner.
Yeah. True enough.
Your recall is amazing, Rob. They all just blur into one for me, but that's very impressive.
Right, here we go. It's from Steve. Good evening, Vic. Do we have information now on club accounts? If they were available as mentioned by the new CEO, why have they not been put on the website? Open, transparent communication does not seem so, does it? Personally, I'm fed up with the goings on at our club. I will never stop being a town supporter, but at times they certainly know how to make us a bit angry and feel let down. We will still be here when they are long gone. Well, Steve, I got an answer from the trust, actually, because I thought I'll ask. And it says this. One meeting has taken place. The next one is occurring this week. And they're working on a format in which to display the information to effectively summarize the accounts in a way we will all understand, including people like me who has absolutely no idea about figures. So there you go. One meeting has taken place. Another one is about to, and hopefully before too much longer, those much vaunted accounts will be made public. We'll see. So there we are, Declan. Oh, sorry, Craig. Come on.
No, that's really positive news, because it felt a little bit kind of stuck this time last week. And I think we were all reeling, I think, from things that were said, but it just felt like there was the two sides weren't communicating. So that's really positive. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Sometimes the economics of football, just don't really make sense. We've got 8,500 coming through the county ground turnstiles every week. And we've got issues with a playing budget. You look at clubs like Barrow and other teams in our league with smaller crowds who are much more positive, much more, it seems, well managed and can get a better squad of players together. Now, getting the accounts together and getting the information in the accounts is fine. I, like most Swindon fans, would welcome that if and when we can get to see them. But the more important account for me is what Michael Flynn's transfer budget is going to be in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, I mean, I've often said, and I'll say it repeatedly, what happens on the green bit between 3 and 5 o'clock on a Saturday is the most important thing to most people. And that didn't really happen for any of us on Saturday, did it? Hi, Neil. Paul Bundy. Paul Bundy says the same three ingredients needed and identified as key by the club in the summer. What did we do about it? Given people like Rob said that they at the club planned to get such players. Let's see in January. The proof is in the pudding. I think he means Rob Angus as opposed to you, Rob. There are loads of negative comments when Young was announced. Is there not a chance Kemp could stay as a trade-off for the Twine money still owed? If Clem don't sign these players, is no ambition at the club, says Andy. Hi, Martin. The concern is that we didn't have Kemp or Young for the first half of the season. We'd be in a relegation fight, Rob. I mean, that's a fair point, isn't it?
Totally. You have to say we don't know what the alternatives would have been, because obviously you have to assume that there would have been two different players here rather than Kemp and Young. None of us can say how successful those two players would have been. But the reality of the situation is, if you take, as we said a few minutes ago, you take their goals and their assists out of the team, what have you got left? Very, very little, in truth, in terms of an attacking sense. And that's the big issue, isn't it? Because at the start of the season, when we were talking about all the champagne football that Declan mentioned a few minutes ago, it was the goals being scored that were hiding the fact that we were still shipping an awful lot of goals at the back. It made no difference to a great degree because it just made for more entertainment. Okay, Swindon had conceded 3 this afternoon, so let's go and score 6.
Yeah.
But we were scoring those goals before the others were getting theirs, and that was the difference, I think. Because once we started to go behind in games, that's where you see a different mentality. Then you've got to see the battling spirit for those sort of players to find their way back into games. And I can't think of too many where we've been behind and we've turned them around. That for me is the biggest indictment of whether the spirit is there to be able to will your way to success. Once Town go behind, generally speaking, most people on the pitch and off the pitch feel like there's no chance of us getting back into it. And you look back at the supporters and the players at Wrexham, the supporters and the players at Morecambe, the supporters and the players at Accrington to an extent, albeit they never quite made it. They stuck with their team. They believed that they still had a chance. That might be because they could see how ropey defensively we were, but they still believed that they had a chance in games. What happens at Wimbledon? And I've got no disrespect for anybody who spent their money and walked out after 70 minutes, but that's just an admission of failure, isn't it? We're not going to do it. We don't believe we're going to get back in the game. Players don't believe they're going to get back in the game when they suddenly see half their support disappear. It's just a spiraling situation which isn't ever going to get turned in your favour, and that's half your problem, I think, at the moment. Like I said earlier on, it feels like nobody is pulling in the same direction. We have to turn that around.
Yeah. Andy says he is here. He's injured. Brewitt. We're worse without him, Craig. What's your view on that? Brewitt's been out. I think he's got a problem with his knee, isn't he? That seems to be the injury.
No, I mean he's been. I think when he was fit, I thought Brewitt was outstanding. I mean, he had a couple of stinkers, but they all did. I mean, I saw the highlights of the lowlights of the Aldershot game. He looked suspect there, but it all went wrong when he brought his dog out. When he brought his dog out for the photo shoot, I think it's a pet-related injury. Perhaps he's got rabies or something. But
it's your fault, Declan, because you got the shirt there. Look, the shirt's there. It's your fault.
I know our team lacks bite at the moment, but that's taking it a bit further.
No, I mean, Brewitt was solid. I mean, to me, it was player of the season. I mean, obviously Young and Kemp were up there as well, but he was like the unsung hero, wasn't he, Craig? I mean, if every game you always thought he had a great game.
And he was always, when I sit in the Don Rogers, because I've got one of these. One of those. I know it's outrageous. I'm looking forward to using my 9 free games up. But I sit in the Don Rogers, and he's always over there at the end, punching, showing the badge. And we may not win every week, we may not be, win at all, but you just want people to be passionate. And I think he's just an instantly likable character.
Yeah, sure.
And I think he's not as mercurial as McCurdy, but he's got that passion and instantly likable, because you feel as if he'll put his body on the line for the club, and that's, you want players like that. So he's a huge miss. He's a huge miss at the moment.
Yeah, we've had him on here a couple of times, and he's always been very good indeed, and shows his passion for the football club. Ian says, knowing our luck, a new big centre back would be injured within a short time. Yeah, let's always look on the disappointing side of it, but that's the way it is, isn't it? Hi, Gordon. Isn't there a problem that players are only allowed to play for 2 league clubs during a season? If Young features for Bradford, they can't sell. Doesn't apply to Kemp, as he hasn't played for MK. Hi, Carol. Didn't Flynn say in his pre-match presser last week that he's been speaking to Clem about January, despite what Anthony said last week? It won't happen, Rob, says Tony. Just what we said last week. CEOs responsible for budgets this day and age with Zoom meetings beyond me. The old Swindon saying we won't bring anyone in that's not better than we have. In reality, at least 10, including bench, are not good enough. Wow, Declan, 10 players coming in. Wow.
Not a hope. not a hope. Not a hope. But one thing we haven't done for a considerable period of time is start to look at building a team. And building a team starts with a permanent signing of a goalkeeper. We've been quite lucky, I think, and quite fortunate with some of the lone keepers we've had over the years. Benda, Solbrin last season. I think Murphy Mahoney to a large degree this season. But I think we've got an experienced goalkeeper as well in Lewis Ward on the bench. And young Bran is doing well down the road too, I believe. And I don't know what the lads think maybe about a slight change there, just trying something different and giving Lewis a bit of a run in the team. Was that feasible, do you think, lads?
Well, let's talk about the spine of the team, because that to me is often said as the most important bit. And it starts with the goalkeeper, Rob, doesn't it? And what Declan says is absolutely right. We don't have permanent goalkeepers anymore. We have loan signings.
Yeah, it's true. And we haven't even debated the fact that QPR could call Murphy Mahoney.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't think it's going to happen, but they could call him back. It could very easily happen. And we might be looking for somebody else anyway. It's a very tricky one, isn't it? Because you sort of think, well, if a team are prepared to loan a goalkeeper out, you've got him for the season, because the chances are they're not going to bring him back in January. And you could find that you've unearthed a real gem there. And I think our issue at the moment with the Lewis Ward Murphy Mahoney situation is the fact that it's pretty clear Mahoney is better with his feet than Lewis Ward ever will be. But Lewis Ward has got that size and that bit of presence that if he used it would make a big difference to the centre backs, because he's going to come and claim the ball. He's a big old unit. He's going to take a few defenders and forwards with him. So it could give the team a bit more confidence. We don't know what's happened to Murphy Mahoney's confidence over the course of these few bashings that we've had over the last few weeks, where the goals have been going in. I mean, we saw he very nearly capitulated, didn't he, in that Accrington game with that clearance at the very end, which almost cost Swindon a 4th goal. So I imagine his confidence isn't great, but taking him out of the team, is that going to damage him even further as a young lad? It's very tricky to know. You'd need to be on the playing side to work that one through. But Mike Flynn's got to find some answers. And if he does think that the physical size of the team is too small, there is an obvious. He's got very few options at the moment in terms of being able to change it with outfield personnel. He would have an option with changing it with goalkeepers.
Okay, we'll move on because we've got lots of points. Do you want to quickly address that, Craig? Do you think should we change it?
No, carry on, go on.
Okay. Right. Going down is never a good thing, especially when the league below is filled with strong teams and even worse officials. Tim says, can't believe we're talking about relegation of our once great club. What's going on? Who knows if another club will want to bid to have Young and Kemp together? Interesting point. We have to address the elephant in the room. Does Clem really have the money to take this club forward? He also has to fund ground development. which is a point. Mark says, can you actually believe what we are sat here listening and contemplating go out of the Football League? How bad have things got that this conversation is a realistic one? I honestly thought when Clem took over, we had the potential to remove the dark clouds hanging over us. Sadly, this is clearly not the case. The way things are going, I think a league match against Supermarine is more likely than those down the A420. Who would ever thought it? That's from Steve. So loads and loads of them coming in. How much are Barrow losing a season to be getting gates of 2,000 and being in the third in the league? Now, Jazz St. George says, Barrow haven't got any freeloaders. Now, I'm going to go back to what Alan Wilson said earlier in the programme, because I did say we would discuss it. And it goes back to last Monday and what Anthony Hall said about season tickets, about 9 free games in a season on a season ticket. Now, I think it was, and this is a personal view, so hey, have a go at me if you want. But I think it was wrongly said, because there are, in our opinion, getting a season ticket means you get admission to the game at reduced price. That's how I understand it. But if you take them at full price, then there are free games that you go into. So it's a looking at the way of season tickets work. Is that fair to say, Craig? You proudly held up your season ticket just now.
Yeah,
you could argue you do have free games if you look at it that way.
And quite rightly too. But I mean, I'm not an economist, but I understand elasticity of demand and supply. And, it was the club that set the prices, and they must have worked on some kind of price sensitivity analysis. And, so I think it was, I'm going to give the guy the benefit of the doubt because he was under pressure. A lot of tricky questions, probably felt a bit under fire, and it was a misspeak perhaps. But right now, of all times, we want to hear soothing, calming messages from the people running the club, because I think the supporters are turning on each other. There seems to be all the mistrust that all evaporated away. That's back again. There's quite a toxic atmosphere. So, I think it's really important that people representing the club or representing the supporters group or the trust, speak carefully and cautiously when they do speak. But yeah, there was a song about it in the away end. I think that left a sour taste in everybody's mouth, I think, this time last week.
Well, there are lots of comments coming in, as you can imagine. Sean says, short memory saying about 9 free games. Oops. Did CEO not know about the season ticket money all our fans waved on the takeover? Yeah, a lot of us did. I did. And as someone reminded me on the forum in the week, a lot of us freeloaders gave up a refund during the pandemic. It's another point. And more of those coming in. £27 walk-up is disgraceful for 4th Division football team. Season tickets are about loyalty and cash up front for the club. Because that's the point, Declan, isn't it? You give your money up front. And, the club has your money. The way I look at it is it's a way of them getting through the summer and then building towards the season because they have that money up front. What's your view on it?
I think we live in, as we all know, very tough economic times. Cost of living here as well as in the UK is spiraling all the time. If we give Clem or Funny, whatever it is, in terms of a season ticket price, we do it because of our love of the club and our belief in the project that he's in charge of. I think the comments made by the CEO last week were disrespectful to season ticket holders. They were insulting to season ticket holders and do very little to maintain the confidence of those people. If you take those people out of the equation, I'm not sure how many season tickets we have, Vic, in the club this season.
Just over 5,000, I would estimate. They were looking 5, for 6, weren't they?
Yeah, 5,000, yeah. If you take 50% of that or 60% of that away, what's his revenue stream like next April, May and June? So as far as I'm concerned, his comments were disrespectful, they were ill-timed and ill-advised. I don't want to be taken for a fool. I don't want to be disrespected for my support of the football club. I don't know about the two lads there, but to be honest with you, that's the way I felt when I heard it last week, and was greatly insulted by what he said.
People say £27 too much. Wimbledon's top price ticket is 35.
35. Wow. I paid 35 on Saturday. Yeah, by 2. Yeah, I did. But for a wonderful stadium, it must be said, quality stadium, absolutely. But yeah, £35 was their top premium price on Saturday afternoon.
Come on, stop trying to appease Mr. Hall, the CEO that doesn't know the budget. I don't think we were trying to appease anyone. We were just making comments about the situation, Rob. It just goes to show, doesn't it? You want to hear what you want to hear? That's great. What about you then, Rob? What's your view?
Well, I think we just have to put ourselves into a slightly different position, don't we, at the moment? We've got a situation where we know financially we still haven't got ourselves sorted yet. So there is going to be an expectation from the club that people pay a little bit more. I get that. Park that for 1 second. You simply don't attack the people who are funding your club more than anyone else. You don't try to hack off those people who really have, through thick and thin, paid their money and put it up front for you to do whatever you can do in the summer so that they get the best chance of having a successful season. The people who are the season ticket holders, whether people like being a season ticket holder, whether they can afford to be a season ticket holder, all the financial constraints we know are hamstrung an awful lot of people at these days. It's a real commitment to put your money to a football club. So to give those people the message that they are effectively getting games for free really is not the way to sell your business. Absolutely not the way to sell your business. This is an entertainment industry. Those people can choose to pay to do whatever they like with their Saturday afternoon, and then you've lost all your money. You've not lost a little percentage of it. You've lost all your money. You have to try to build bridges with everybody who's at this football club at the moment. And that is the problem. 2 years ago, Clem had us eating out of the palm of his hand. I hope he gets back to the situation that in 2 years' time we can say we got back to that. But none of us at this moment in time can believe we can get there. And that's where he's got to show his mettle now to us. He's got to prove to us, forget the season ticket scenario. If we know that currently our situation is financially, we just don't have a clue where we stand. We can't make the numbers add up. It just doesn't make any sense. And until they can prove to us one way or the other, he's going to get a backlash of support, whether he likes it or not. And he's got to do that himself alongside the people who work at the club. They've all got to start singing from the same song sheet. They've all got to start being far, far more positive than what we're hearing at the moment, because everything we're hearing is a negative situation. If they want people back, they've got to turn it around from the top.
Sure. Okay. Well, more comments, then we'll wrap it up. For me, a season ticket holder who's travelling in retirement, I renewed mine on the basis that I can afford to miss a few games, plus support my club. That's from Trevor. Surely if they even slightly drop the price, looking at our fan base out there, the crowds would be even bigger. I certainly won't renew early doors until I see recruitment results in January. Steve said, did a season ticket holder ever win the trip to Oz? You might remember that was an offer a few seasons ago. I don't believe they did. I debated whether to renew for this current season. I bought on the planned project as outlined by Clem and Rob Angus. I feel slightly aggrieved our recruitment didn't match my realistic expectations. Like many, I feel I need reassurances that we're heading in a positive direction for the future. And Ben Bobo Harrison, or Bobo, I should say, and Alan says, well said, Declan and Rob, on season ticket holders. I take my hat to you both. You've summed it up really well. Craig, do you want to have a final say on it?
It's an unusual business, isn't it? The football business. I don't know why anybody would want to do it. Personally, you put your head over the power pit and you're there to be shot down. We're incredibly loyal. We're customers like any other customers. We are, I don't particularly go to be entertained. I'd prefer if we won, but we often don't. I go because of that sense of community and identity. So we're very special. We're very, very loyal customers, and I think, it's right that we're treated with respect because of that. And I Declan, you had that spot on there. I think it didn't feel like that this time last week. I think everyone was really quite shocked by the tenor of what was being said. Yeah.
Okay. Rob says, hope Clem has tuned into this. Well, thank you very much indeed for all your comments. Hopefully next Monday, we'll be discussing a big victory over Barrow. I would really love to think that's the case. But Rob for the moment, Craig for the moment, Declan for the moment. Thank you very much indeed. Are we all at the County Ground Saturday? Declan, are you flying over for that one?
I shall be there.
No, Vic, next game will be Forest Green on the 29th of December. So I just want to take this opportunity to wish all at Swindon Town the very best for Saturday, and have a good and peaceful Christmas. And we'll see you all, please God, on the 29th.
Yeah, and we wish you all the very best for the festive season as well, Declan. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the Legends before the Forest Green game. If that's okay with you.
Yes, indeed, Vic. It's a date.
Lovely. And we'll see you as well, Craig, on Saturday. And you definitely see you on, Rob, because you're sat behind me, so I can't escape you. So
you'll see me and hear me.
So there you are, Chris. We got through a lot of comments.
We did, certainly did. It's well done, Mark, for putting them through. Thank you very much, panel, for your time. And thank you for everybody watching. As Vic says, we will see you next Monday for another panel on the Barrow game. So until then, have a nice week. And we'll see you next week.
One second. Yeah, we should say Fools Rush In is on at 8:30 tonight. 8:30.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yes, they are.
But you've still got time for a cup of tea then. So you've still got time to go and have tea before they come on. So, yeah. So, okay then. So have a good week and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.